So we're going to first go ahead and open Civil 3D. Does everybody have Civil 3D open?
Yep.
Okay. So you should be in a brand new drawing. So this guy, because we opened it, a brand new drawing in Civil 3D, it has the template information. So it has all of your styles associated with it, okay? So what we want to do is we want to get that surface in there or create that surface. So somebody's sharing a surface with us, but they don't have a surface file. So what we're going to do is we're going to insert this guy. So just go to the insert command. You can just type in I if you wish. Click on current drawing. And we're going to go to this 3 dots here and allows us to browse. So I just put mine out on the desktop. And I've got to find the file. Let's see where I put it. I've got too many things. So it's called lecture drawing, lecture 12.dwg. It should look like that. You can go ahead and open that. Now that should show up right there as a block, kind of like that. Is everybody good so far?
Yeah.
All right, so what you're going to do when that shows up down below, it says insertion point. If that has a check on it, get rid of that check mark because we want to bring it in its own, it's 000 reference. So then you can just right click on that, say insert, and it should do a zoom extents and you should now see it on your screen. So all we did was just did a block insertion. How's that for everybody?
Good.
Okay, so if you click on this, you'll notice it's all one object, okay? So it's neither a surface nor a separate object. So what we're going to do is click on it and just hit X and then hit enter. That'll explode it. So what you've now done is created these guys. These are polylines, okay? And if you notice, you click, mine says it's a polyline. And these guys are just what are called block references because these are older style points. These were points that were created in a program called Softdesk, which no longer exists. So right now we have neither surface data nor point data, but we're gonna utilize that to create our surface. Now don't move this circle because that circle's our control point for our. That's where we're gonna make our alignment start from. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and create a surface. Now again, make sure this is exploded. And by the way, if you're going to make polylines into, or contours rather, into surfaces, they have to be 2D polylines and they have to be at the proper elevation. So if you listed this guy, you'd see that he's all at like 800 or 802 or whatever. So each one of these is at a proper elevation. So I'm going to right click surfaces over here and create a surface. You can call it anything you want. It's going to just call it surface 1 and that's going to be okay for me. So I'm going to open this up. There's surface 1. So what we now have is contour data. So right click contour data and tell it to add it. So this guy is a way of adding your data and then giving it descriptions. But two things that are important here are what are called weeding factors. So there's a distance weeding factor and an angle weeding factor. So if you have a lot of polylines with a lot of vertexes, you're going to generate a huge amount of data. And what this allows you to do is get rid of some of it. So a distance weeding factor will look at 3 successive points, and it takes the distance from the first point to the second point and the second point to the third point. It adds those together. And if it's less than 15, then it drops the 1 point in the middle. Now, if you don't want to get rid of any points, what you do is you set your weeding factors down to 0. So I'm going to get rid of I don't want it to weed anything. So I'm going to set my distance weeding factor to 0 and my angle weeding factor to 0, which, by the way, that's like a deflection angle between 3 points. So if you have a huge site, you might want to weed some stuff out. You can also supplement stuff, and I normally don't do any of that. So I usually don't like to weed it because what that does is gets rid of some of my data. So what I'm going to do is then get rid of those, hit OK, and then we're just going to select the whole thing. And then we're going to hit enter, and you now have a surface. And what you should notice, this surface is now sitting on top of the contours, and if you see any contours that are sticking out of it, then they didn't actually, the contours that you see don't match what's happening. So you can see ours are sitting right on top of that contour data, and it looks pretty good. We don't see anything that looks bad. Does anybody see anything bad? Like, I don't see anything that's missing. So that's actually my surface right there. So my surface is matching it really well. Now, if we had weeded stuff out, it probably wouldn't match so well. All right. Is everybody doing all right so far?
Yep.
Okay, so we're gonna do a couple things here. I want you to click on your surface. Actually, if you just touch your boundary, it'd probably be better. Get your tin surface and then right click. We're gonna go to surface properties. Let's set the contours to no display for a minute. So the reason we want to do that, we want to get these guys out of here, okay? So what I'm going to do is just click on the green one, and it'll show me what layer that is. So I can just go here and then just freeze it. So I don't want that one. Or I can also do this little guy, which is a cool one. You can do freeze by just selection. So if you just, let's see, freeze, where is that one? It's one of these. That one. You can just do that one, and you can just freeze by object. Okay, so we want to get them out of there because those are just now graphics. We can't delete them because if you delete them because they're tied to the surface, you delete the data, I think. So you don't want to do that.
Which layer was that?
I think one was called contour high and the other one's contour normal. I believe those were older. Let's see. I think one's contour high and contour normal. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Those came from actually another program that predated this by years. I think it came from they're there, contour high and contour normal.
Okay.
Those are the ones you want to freeze. Okay?
Yep.
Notice we have our points sitting behind here. We're going to fix those here now. So these guys don't exist as points, but we're going to make them points here. So we're going to go to points. And there's ways to convert other older style points. So you can convert Land Desktop points to Civil 3D points, AutoCAD points, and you can do these things called Softdesk points, and these are really old. So we're going to replace Softdesk points, and all you're going to do is just select that and then hit enter. So they come back with X's, and what that means is now, if you look in your point group, you now have 15 points that are set at elevation, and they have a description. Okay, did that work for everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to go back to our surface props. We're going to set this surface display to, I think we had it at 2s and 10s. I guess that works. We might set that to a higher range. Yeah, we can do it at 2s and 10s are fine, but let's make sure we do a 10 back design. So just to make sure that it came back, that looks good there, okay? All right, so I want to show you something about this surface now. We're going to click on him and right click, go to surface props, and let's open up this guy and go to the display. And this time we want to turn on the triangles. Okay, apply that. I want to show you something. Does anybody notice what's happening what's going on? This thing is low at this end. This is coming uphill. This is a ridge line that's coming out, and then it's dropping this way. So it's coming up, and then it's dropping. Anybody know what's happening? See what those triangles are doing right there? Anybody know what's going on there? That is basically a plateau or a mesa right now. It doesn't have any higher points to it because there's no information to make it higher. So essentially you have whatever that contour is to that contour, the same contour. This is a flat plane right now. Now, that could be reality, but it actually isn't because of the way it's working. So what we're going to do is we're going to add the point group in there because those guys have elevations along that ridge that are going to edit that, okay? So what we're going to do is go over to the surface. We're going to go to point groups, add point groups, and I'm just going to add them all. Now watch what happens when I add mine. You notice how it reconfigured with the triangles? That's what yours should do as well. What we've done is we've given that a better surface by adding into that some points that needed to be there to define it better. Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, mine did not work.
Did you convert your points?
Yeah.
So if you go to point groups,
I got it now.
okay, all right. Either you didn't add them or the points didn't get created, one of the two. Okay, it worked now though. Everybody else okay?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a good thing to show you because this is another way you can create surfaces. And I didn't show you this before because you don't normally do this under normal circumstances. This is not a good design surface because you're really completely basing it on whatever somebody else did. But it's a good way of getting information quickly. And so sometimes you can use it, okay? All right, does anybody have a question or are we good? Okay, so this is going to be our working surface. So now what we need to do, we're going to now need to create an alignment. So I'm going to go ahead and make this guy a little bit friendlier to look at. So we're going to go to surface props and let's just turn those triangles off because those are pretty nasty to look at. You can really get rid of some of the contours if you wanted to just see the 10-foot contours, for instance, the major contours, you could just to make it less busy. But that's okay for what we're doing, so it really doesn't matter. And if you don't want to see your points, you could create a blank point group. We might want to do that because we don't want to get those in the way. So I'm going to create a real quick blank point group. Hopefully you guys are really starting to see this is easy to do and something that you kind of do routinely. Just set it to none for the display and none for the labels and include all points in this guy. And that gets those points out of the way. Okay, so what we're going to do is go to that second, that first schematic, this guy here, and we're going to start at the center of that. We're going to generate a bearing and distance, bearing and distance, and bearing and distance, okay? So we got that 84 degrees, and then the distance and the 47, okay? So let's go ahead and we'll do that. So I'm going to use a line by bearing, snap to the center of that circle for your starting point. And then that first bearing is in the northeast quadrant. That's quadrant 1, 84 degrees, 860 feet. And then we're going to go into the southeast quadrant, 2, 47 degrees at 830 feet. And then we're going to do, at the end of our road, it's going to be due north. So that would be quadrant 1 or quadrant 2, 90 degrees, due east, I think. It's due east, I mean, 775. And then you're done. Okay, so that's going to be our alignment. And the circle really has no more relevance to us, so we can just delete that out now. Is everybody okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so who can tell me what's our next step to make an alignment? You guys should know how to do this now.
Go to the alignment
Yep.
and say create alignment from objects.
Yeah, that's one easy way to do it. And since we've done it this way, I tell you what, those alignment tools are really hard for me to use. I think this is so much simpler. Yes, so we're going to do this, okay? So just select your lines. Be careful, don't hit one of those surface lines. It doesn't like that. So just get those guys. your arrows should go from left to right. If they don't, reverse them, okay? If they're good, then just hit enter. So this is going to be called alignment 1. So that's good, but just keep in mind all of your alignments are going to be attached to everything else. So just make sure that you know where they are, okay? We are starting at 0, 0. 0, 0 was where the circle was. We're not dealing with a site. We are going to call this proposed. And if you'd like, let's go ahead and add 200-foot curves here, and then go ahead and hit OK. So we should see our alignment now. Is that good, everybody? So it looks like we've got about 2,400 feet, 2,400 and approximately 50 feet. So this is going to be the feature that is going to drive the profile now. Actually, both of these guys. The profile ground information is coming from the surface. The profile alignment information is coming from the alignment, and if one or both of these guys change, the profile will change with it. So they're linked, which is really, really an awesome feature, the way this works. Everybody okay with their alignments? No problems?
No problems.
So let's go ahead and do a save at this point, because that way, if you guys save it to a location you know you can find, and that way if you guys crash, I can grab one for you, and we'll have it too. So I'm going to call this my lecture. Just make sure you put it in a location. No, I don't want to overwrite something. Let's see. I'll just call this for, what is the date? The 5th. All right. So I have that saved. All right, so the next step, we're going to go ahead and create, at this point, profile. So one of the things that we need to recognize here over in the prospector, you now have an alignment. So these alignments, if you open that up, you'll see you have an alignment, then you have what are called centerline alignments. And here we open this up, there's the alignment we just created. So you could have multiple alignments, as you might understand, because we have, let's say, a major road here, we might have a road we're coming off of, we may have a spur road over here and another road over here. Each one of those would be a separate alignment. Associated with each alignment, then you will have what are called super elevation views, potentially profiles, profile views, and sample lines. So the two things we're going to be looking at are these guys called profiles and profile views. So the view is going to basically be your existing ground, and then your profile will be your actual design profile. So you can have two features here once we get going on this. Right now we have nothing, okay, because we don't have any profiles associated with that. If you put these guys in sites, your alignments will show up down in your sites, but notice we don't have any sites, so we don't have that issue going on, okay? So let's go ahead, we're ready to generate a profile. So what we're going to do is come up here to profiles. So notice there's quite a few different commands here: create surface profile, profile creation tools, best fit, profile from files, quick profile. So there's a lot of different ways of doing it. So if you're going to get into any kind of hard design, the first thing you need to do is create what's called a surface profile, because it has to know what ground it's sampling, and it has to know what alignment it's using to sample that with. So then we would go into our next step of creating profiles. So profile creation tools are primarily used for your design, but you have to have this first step here. So we're going to do create surface profile first. So you'll get this dialog box, it'll pop up, and it wants to know two things essentially: what alignment it needs to be associated with, and what surface it needs to be associated with, because you could have multiple things of these within your file. So we only have one alignment, so it automatically goes out and assumes, well, that's the alignment you're going to use. Okay, but if you had more, you would have to grab the one you want. Now, it doesn't assume a surface, so you always have to click on the surface, and then you have to add it. So it should pop up down here. And then notice if we look down here, it tells us this is our surface, the type of surface, what's called dynamic, which basically means they're linked. You would definitely want that. And what it's sampling. So you can sample it from the beginning of this alignment to the end of it, but you can also clip that. So if you just wanted to look at from, say, station 100 to station 23 plus 00, you could clip it so it only samples over that range. Normally, if you're going to do a highway or a road or whatever, you're probably going to do from start to end. So that's what we're going to do. If you toggle on this thing called sample offsets, what that'll do, that'll allow you to sample not only the center line, but you can sample left of the center line and right of the center line at the same time. And so your profile could have 3 ground lines on it. And that's useful if you have like ditches. So you might have a ditch section that you're going to be looking at to the left of it and to the right of it. Okay, but we're going to keep it real simple. So we got alignment, we got the surface we're going to use, and then we have what we're sampling over. So we're just ready to go ahead and do this draw profile. And it takes you to this guy called a wizard, and we can go through this if you want, but I don't normally use it, but we'll go through it. So the first thing it's going to do is general questions. It's just, again, it's showing you what it's going to use. Now, it is giving you at this point a name that it's going to call this profile. So if you want a particular name, you can change that. Otherwise, I'm not going to mess with it. There's profile styles here, lots of them here you can see. I'm just going to use this one, the major one. So it's just major grids and HGPs. We're going to edit this stuff down anyway. So we're going to go to the next. So this is telling you the range that it's going to do. So right now it's going to go from the starting point to the ending point. Again, even though we sampled all of that, we don't have to draw all of that. So we could clip it here if we wanted to. So notice this picture is really cool because it's showing you, hey, you sampled the complete thing, but now I want to clip it. But we're going to do what's called automatic. Okay. Go to next. So this is your height settings. So it's set to go, it looks at like the lowest elevation and then it usually drops it below that. Now, if you have pipes in yours, in your design, you might want to drop it below that minimum even further. So it's going to just kind of guess what it thinks. It looks at your lowest and it drops it a little bit below it, and it looks at your highest and then it's going to take it up a little bit higher. I usually just let it rip with automatic, and then we can come back and edit that after the fact. You can also split profiles, by the way, so it's kind of cool. You can have split views. Next. This is showing you what it's going to be displaying and how it's going to clip. And one of the kind of neat things here is if you turn this, toggle that off, it won't draw the actual surface in the profile, it just draws the grid, but we really want the surface. Go to next. This is bands, and bands, we're gonna generate bands. Bands are probably one of the cooler aspects of that, and they have different types. These guys are pieces of information that'll run at the bottom. I'll show you that, but we're using just the normal one, what's called finished ground and existing ground. Next. And this is kind of a neat process. You can shade between your design profile and your existing profile with like hatching. So you can have like green if you're in fill and red if you're in cut. It's kind of neat, but it also is, it's a lot of data that you don't really need. Most people wouldn't do that, but you can do that if you want. So we're just going to go ahead and create this profile. So we really didn't change anything. Now, where you put the profile doesn't matter because you can move them around any place you want because it knows what it's linked to. When the old program I use called Land Desktop, you had to be really careful because if you moved your profile after you put it in there, anytime you brought any information in, it would generate the information over where the old profile was. So you couldn't move them around. So most people will do like what's called a plan and a profile. They have the plan on the top, profile on the bottom. Really doesn't matter. I'm just going to put it over to the side here. And there's your profile. Okay, did everybody get their profile in?
Yeah.
So this is This is called a profile view, and it's got a lot of things to it. Let's see. I'm not sure. What's your scale factor in your drawing, guys? Mine's a 40. We might want to increase that, maybe to 100, just so you can see your numbers a little bit better. Some of them are overlapping, and we'll handle that. Okay. Is that working?
Yeah.
So all of this profile is driven by, styles on how it looks, and also settings that are giving it the labeling, but all this stuff's automatic. We're going to play with this here in a minute, but this is your title. We can turn this off. This is your stationing. These are called your major ticks. These little guys are your minors. Then these are your grid itself. Down below, you also have the same thing, and notice we have an overlap. This little thing right here is a band. Okay, that if you click right there, you'll notice just that's your band. We're gonna edit that down. So we can move the band. Right now, there's no gap between the band and that. And notice we're set to a range of these are actually every 10 feet. So this is your vertical. So the profile, that's a couple things we need to look at. The profile has a skewed factor on it, and we'll look at that here in a minute. But the horizontal scale is what this is set to right now. So it thinks that this is 1 inch is equal to 100 feet, but this looks like it's 1 inch is equal to 10 feet. So we can change that skew factor, and that's pretty important when we get into this with our paper space. So that'll make a difference in how you set that. But we'll look at that here in a minute. The red line here, that's your existing ground right now. And these blue lines, what these are, this is your PC and your PT of your curve. And you probably have another, I think there should be some more showing up. I believe those are PCs and PTs. That's how that works. There should be another one in here. I'm not sure why. It might be on top of one of those. So you have the end, that's your end horizontal geometry line. That's your PC, PT. That's your PC. There's probably a PT here, and then that's your end point. Those are kind of, most people don't use those, but it's kind of nice to see where your horizontal curves work with your vertical curves. Okay. Is everybody getting that to work okay? Any questions? We're all doing well?
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to show you what dynamic linking is. This is really cool. So we're going to change this guy up, and I want you to notice when we change this, this is going to change as well, okay? So we're going to, actually, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Don't do this because I don't want you guys to mess yours up, but I'm going to take that and I'm going to grip this. Let me turn that box off. Can you guys see both of my shots? Watch, I'm going to take that link and I'm going to drag it. Did you notice my profile changed?
Yeah.
If I change my PI location, oops, that really whacked it out. So anytime that you just change something, that profile is going to change to reflect that. So that's really cool because they are linked together. Now I'm going to do a couple undos back to get this back to where it was. All right. So that's what your guys should be looking at. But we are going to change this a little bit. So we're going to come over here to the alignment. I want you to right click on it, or just left click the alignment. We're going to right click and we are going to go to edit alignment geometry. So we're going to see this tool. By the way, this tool right here, if this is your horizontal alignment or geometry editor, the vertical one looks pretty similar to this. So it does have kind of similar tools, but it's definitely different what it's doing. All right, so we're going to go to the grid view here. And what I want you to do is change the two curves that have a radius of 200. We want to change them to 500. We're going to go 500 here and 500 here. I'm going to go ahead and close that. Close that. Notice our curves are at 500. And you didn't see the subtle changes in here, but this also changed as well to reflect that. Okay. So that's the really cool aspect of how these guys are all linked together. All right. That's the great thing about this. All right. Any questions? We're all good?
Yep.
Okay, go ahead and do a save. We don't want to lose this at this point. All right, let me, I'm gonna flip over to my little whiteboard here a minute. I want to show you some things now that we need to understand. Okay, so now what we have is we have a profile, a grade line that kind of, you know, we've got a grade. This is my existing ground line, okay? So what we're gonna do is come in here and we're gonna design what are called tangents. Now, in horizontal terminology, we call them tangents. Usually in vertical profile terminology, they're really often referred to as gradients. That's probably a better term to use. But basically, a gradient would tie into something and it would have a slope, and then it would have a slope, and then it would have a slope like this, okay? So these guys are called gradients, and some people call them vertical tangents. This would be like, say, the beginning of my alignment. That would be my begin. This would be the end. Now, normally, the beginning is going to start at the beginning of your profile, but the ending doesn't necessarily have to be at the end of it. But if it goes beyond it, you're going to have problems because there's going to be no vertical information out there. Okay, does everybody see what I'm saying? So if your proposed goes out beyond this, there's no vertical information that kind of whacks it out there. You'll have issues, particularly if you attach corridors to it and those kind of things. Everybody get the idea? And what I'm indicating here, if this is what the center line, and I guess I didn't mean to say, this is representing what the center line elevation is going to be, okay? So what we're looking at is profile. Elevations are running this way. Stations are running this way. So if we're looking at our grid, this is your station locations. This is your elevation. Everybody okay with what I'm saying?
Yeah.
This is referenced by a percent grade. Instead of a bearing, we usually use percent grade. So we would see a percent. So for instance, this might be -2%. This might be positive 10%. This might be negative 5%. So that's in a rise over run. So what we're saying here is this is dropping 5 feet for every 100 feet of run you're going. So this is really a typical way of doing your vertical lines. Now, you also have key stations like this guy here and this guy here, okay? These are called PVIs. Instead of PI for a horizontal where the two grades, where the two tangents come together, in a vertical terminology, it's called PVI. That stands for point of vertical intersection, okay? Those are critical points and they're usually defined by a station and an elevation. So instead of a northing and an easting, it's station elevation. So we would have a PVI here, also a station elevation. These are actually called PVIs too, essentially. They're just endpoints. Okay, so begin point, end point. Does everybody see how that's working? Any questions on that? So there are limitations on what you can use on these grades. So anybody take a guess what your maximum grade would be? Percent grade max.
12.
Okay, 12%. Could everybody use 12%? That's actually a very good guess. 12% would work for, like, say, a subdivision road, but you can't do that on an interstate. So interstates max out at 6% because truck traffic and that kind of stuff can't handle it any steeper. But on a subdivision around in Hamilton County, they'll let you go to 12%. So that's really steep. Okay. What about a minimum grade? Do we have minimum grades? Percent grade minimum? Is there such thing? Because I mean, theoretically, you could go to 0, which means it's flat, right? why would you not maybe want it flat on a highway or a roadway? If your roadway is just dead flat, you're going to have no water move off of it, which can be really dangerous in high-speed situations. So normally, depending again on your jurisdiction or what you're dealing with, usually about 0.8%. You don't want to be any flatter than that, up or down, because that means usually at that point, anything less than that, because of the friction with the asphalt or the concrete, it won't move very fast. We kind of rule of thumb, 1% is about the minimum I'd ever want to use. Okay, so somewhere between 1% and 12% for let's say subdivision roads, and say maybe 1% to 6% for interstates. Okay, so those are some kind of cool things you can think about. So one other thing that we need to look at here, some terminology that we're going to see. Now, you guys that have not taken route surveying, you'll be getting into all of this because this is important stuff from a design consideration. So you also, when you have your vertical alignments, so I've got my vertical alignment coming down, I got my vertical alignment coming up. Obviously, a car can't do that, but we have this as my PVI. Okay, so I have this station, and I have this offset or a station and elevation here. So this would be a percent grade coming down. That would be a percent grade. So we usually call that percent grade. This would be grade 1. This would be grade 2 if we're traveling this way. Okay. So what we do is we introduce then a curve here, but it's not a circular curve. It's a parabolic curve. Okay, that's a pretty good curve. And that curve will have a starting point associated with it and an ending point associated with it, or vice versa. So this distance, this is called your length. It's usually defined as L. That's your length. So instead of dealing with a radius, we deal with a length, because this curve is not an arc, it's a parabola. Okay, so it's parabolic. It will have a starting point and an ending point. Okay, some people use the term BVC for beginning a vertical curve and EVC for ending a vertical curve. Some people use the term PVC, point of vertical curve, and PVT, point of vertical tangency. I think you're going to see this and this when you get into Civil 3D, but you can change that up. So your BVC also has a station and an elevation associated with it, and the EVC also has a station and an elevation associated with it. Okay? So you have grade 1, grade 2, and length. Those are your 3 design parameters. Well, this guy too. Those are basically your 4 design parameters. And why you put it at a certain length, again, that gets into design characteristics. We're not going to worry about that. Okay, we're just going to pop them in there. So then what you're doing is you're calculating elevations along this parabola at a certain interval, like say every 25 feet or whatever. Okay. So the beauty is that this software does all of this for you. All you got to do is draw it, and it just pops those parabolas in. Any questions so far?
No.
Okay. So they're easy to change. Okay, they're easy to change. So we can change grades, we can change lengths, we can change PVI location. So that's all so fluid and flexible. And then that'll give us about, like say how much cut, how much fill we got going on in this thing. Oh, one other thing. This type of curve is called a sag curve. And the other kind of curve is called a crest. So if you invert that and your curve's doing this, that's a crest curve. So notice Sag curves normally have what's called a low spot, and crest curves usually have a high spot or a high point, but they don't always have that, okay? So there will be ways to calculate where that sag point is and the crest point, because for a sag curve, if you have a low spot, that's where water is going to collect. So that means that's a point that you're going to have to put a catch basin in to catch it. And a high spot's where water is going to break. So that's going to act like a ridge. It's going to shield it both directions. It's more important to pinpoint low spots than it is high spots, but the software does all that for you, okay? Is everybody good with that? So you guys that haven't taken route surveying, you'll get into all of this stuff. And McAllister, you've taken that, so you know what I'm talking about. So, all right. Any questions? All right, let's go back. Let's do some profiles. Okay, so we're gonna spend our time here a minute, and then we're gonna edit some of the look of this to make this look a little bit easier for us to see. So this is a little tough. Some of the ways you do this, but what we're gonna do is just generate. I'm gonna just generate some quick lines in here. So you could literally do the same thing we just did by drawing lines here and then turn those into a profile. But you also have profile creation tools. So I'm going to kind of show you two things. Over here, then you have these guys called, and I hate this thing when it pops out. You got these things called transparent commands. So these are some transparent ones that are nice with profiles. You can design a profile station elevation, design a profile by profile station, a grade station. Then you have what's called grade elevation. So we're going to use a couple of these just to kind of show you how it works, but they're a little tricky, but so kind of keep with me. If you get lost, we'll get caught up. Okay, so we're going to go to the profile, and we're going to use this thing called profile creation tools. So the first thing it's going to want to do is select the profile you want to work with. Sometimes you have to select this more than one time. It's kind of tricky. But this is setting up the template for the profile, if you will. So it knows what alignment it's linked with automatically. Notice that's grayed out. You can't change that because it's that profile or that alignment's linked to this profile view. So it's going to call it profile here. We're going to do what's called a design profile. Notice there's other types of styles in here: basic, existing, ground, intersection. So we're doing the design profile. And we're going to just go ahead and let it do a profile complete label set. Now there's other ones you can do in there or no labels, but we're just going to go ahead and let it label it and then edit those after the fact. So we're going to go ahead and okay that. So you get this tool, and here's that tool like I said before. It kind of looks similar to the layout tools that you have for the alignments, but this is the profile alignment tools. But you got your grid view, and you got, these are all your parabola tools and different things. We're going to come over to this guy, and we're going to do what's called draw tangents with curves. Okay. Now let's go to the curve settings first and see what they're set to. So right now it's going to give you a parabolic curve, which is normal, but there's other types of curves you can have. You could do a circular arc, but most people in the US and North America, they don't use circular arcs. Other countries, they do. We use parabolas for our verticals. And they also have what's called an asymmetric, but we're going to do a parabolic. And then you can define the length for both crest and sag. So there's different parameters in there. The length, or what they call the K value, which is what highway engineers use a lot. We're not going to worry about that either. So we're going to let it rip at 150 for both of these. And then I'm going to do what's called draw tangents with curves. Okay. So as we draw these tangents, it's going to put the curve in between them. All right, so we might get lost in here. If we do, we'll start over. So this is a little tricky sometimes. Okay, so what it wants you to do is specify a start point. So I'm going to do that with an O snap. I'm going to snap it right to that point because I want that to be my design point. And so notice you get this kind of blue line that's popping out. So you could literally just go in and pick point, pick point, pick point. But I have a little bit better parameters. So I want to start this at 4%, and then I want to go to station 400. So I'm going to come over here to this tool here, my transparent tool, and I want you to grab the one that's called Profile Grade Station. Okay, Profile Grade Station. Click on that, and it's going to ask you to do the profile again. So it wants to know the grade. So we're going to use a 4%. Just type in 4, +4, and hit enter. So notice this tool now is tracking you. Now it wants to know what station you want it to be at. You can just drag it if you want, or I'm going to type in 400 for station 4 + 0, 0. Okay. So now it wants the grade from that point on. Let's put it at 9%. And notice there's my PVI, it's coming out. I want to do this at 11 + 0, 0. So 11, 0, 0, enter. Okay. Now I want to go at +2%. And I'm going to go to station 1800. And now I want to go a -2%. Now what I want you to do is I want you to snap to this blue line. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit Shift, right click, nearest, snap to it, and then you can hit enter twice. You may have to do it one more time. Hit the escape key, sorry. All right. So you should have your profile in there now. How's that coming for everybody?
Good.
Little tricky. It's not a perfect world. Sometimes you have to go back and do it a couple times. If you mess up, you can easily generate. You can undo your profile. Actually, I think I have an extra little piece down here, so we'll get rid of some of that stuff. Okay. Is that looking good for everybody? So the blue line that's come in now is my design profile. What they call it, a layout profile. They kind of use two terms there, but it's actually your design. And then the red is the existing ground. And you can see in my case, I'm kind of all over the place with this. This is probably not a good design because what I'm indicating right here is I got a heck of a lot of fill here. So that would not be good. Okay. And also notice is these guys are labels. You can click on them and move them anywhere you want. But you'll notice it's showing me curve information, which is really neat about my parabola. And let's just kind of look at it real quick. If we go to that first one, notice there's your PVI station elevation. There's your length, BVC station and elevation, EVC station elevation. It's not showing me like any high points or anything because we're not labeling it that way yet, but we will here. Here's your parabola right down there. There's your parabola. And that little point right there, that's your actual PVI. So there's your PVI, parabola, PVI, parabola. Is everybody good? Any questions?
No.
So this guy has grip editing tools just like the other editor. So you can click on this guy and notice wherever you have a grip. Like I got a couple of points here. I probably don't need that one there. I'm going to get rid of some of this, but that was my bad. But I could change grades. I can click on them and change grades. I can click on them. I can change the location of the PVI, high, up or down, or left or right. Or you can use this guy, which pulls it. It holds the grade from the one direction, which is kind of neat. So from a design standpoint, if you're just kind of playing with a profile, you can really just get in there and grip it and make it work. Again, a good designer can probably do that, but if we're starting out, it's probably easier to use the grid view because I think that gives you a lot more control. So what we're going to do is we're going to get this guy to match what I have on this one. So I'm going to want to change some things like I'm going to want to change the lengths of vertical curves on these guys. I'm going to want to change some of the percent grades. Okay. So if you have that copy handy, great. If not, I'll get you through it. Okay. So we're going to click on this profile and we're going to go to this grid view here. Okay. So this grid view is showing you station, starting, elevation, and then there's the percent grade out. So if that's good, we can keep that. If you want to change it, you just click in it, change it. Also notice what's really cool is it shows you here whether that curve is what we call a crest curve or a sag curve. You can't change that fact, but you can change them based on what you're getting into there. So what I want to do first is I want to change the curves themselves. So I want to click in here and I want to make that first curve, instead of 150, we're going to make that 200 feet. So anything you did there is reflected. Let me see if I can move this. It actually updated automatically. So I'm going to make this middle curve, we're going to make that, instead of 150, we're going to make that 300. Okay, and you can see when I type that in, it changes it. And I'm going to make that last curve also at 300, or 200 rather. We're going to get 200. Okay. I now want to go to the second PVI, which is at 400, and I want to change that grade from 900 to, or 9% to 8%. So what that's going to do is lower the whole system. So I'm going to go 8% here. And notice what it did is it lowered it quite a bit, which is a lot better design from what it was, right? But we're still really coming out of the ground here. So we're going to lower that to, let's go to 1.5%. Instead, mine says 3%. I'm going to make that 1.5%. And the last one I want to put it at a -2%. And let's see, gonna go ahead and close this and let's see what happened. Now sometimes when you key things in, it'll change one thing but back change the other. So let's see. You guys looking like mine? Not sure why mine are off a little bit. Not sure why. Might be where I snapped initially. So you guys doing all right?
Yeah.
Okay. Looks like the picture that I gave you is a little different. I can't understand that, why that is, but it must have been I might have snapped to something different when I originally did this. It doesn't really matter, just so long as we get the idea, okay? So from a design standpoint, I mean, you've got a lot of flexibility in what you do. So mine's not matching exactly the diagram that I gave you guys, but that's okay. I don't know about yours. Is yours matching mine? Or is it matching your diagram? Mine's just a tad bit off. Stations are all good. Let's see, but mine's a tad bit off. No problem. Any questions? It's that easy. Yeah, that's easy to deal with. Okay. So we have a pretty good design right now, and we could probably live with this. So let's look at something over here. Go ahead and let's do a real quick save. So if I go over now to my alignments and I open up my alignment 1, notice I now have profiles. So I have a profile view. That profile view, by the way, there's your alignment 1 profile view. That's what it's attached to. And then we have your other profile. And here's your layout. That's your design profile. And here is your existing ground surface. So if you would delete any of these in here, you're going to delete them over here, or vice versa. So if I would go in there and click on that guy and delete him, he would take him out over here. Okay, so it's easy to do stuff like that, but it's also easy if I don't like this guy at all and I want to get rid of him, I can do that pretty easily. Okay, any questions? All doing all right? Okay, so let's go ahead. We're going to start to look at the parameters on these grids and start to mess around with them. So what I want you to do is click on the grid here, and we're going to right click. And there's two major things that you would edit: the profile view properties and the profile view style. So the style has a lot to do with how it looks, and the profile is kind of how it's governed. So let's look at the profile view properties first. Okay. This box should pop up for everybody. Is that good? Any questions?
No.
All right, so let's go to the information tab first. So this is showing you the alignment it's attached to, or its alignment name, what object type style it's using, and not much here. Let's go to stations. This is the range of stations that it is using. So again, we could go in and clip that if we wanted to use that specified, even though we've generated it already. We could come down here and change it. So remember, when you run through with the wizard that we did initially, these are kind of some of the same questions it already asked you, but you can edit them after the fact. So we're going to leave that at automatic. Let's look at elevations. We might change this up a little bit. In fact, I think we're going to, because the picture that I gave you, I have mine a little bit differently referenced. So we're going to change this from 720 to 850. So I'm going to go here for a user specified range, and we're going to go to we're going to go to 730. And we're going to go to a height of 880, and I'm doing that because I want to make it fit a certain size. Okay, let's look at our profiles. So these profiles, this box is pretty important because it defines what it's showing. So if you don't want to show the layout profile, you would just toggle that guy off right there. That would get rid of the blue one there. If you want to not show the surface profile, you can do the same thing. Let's see. The styles, you've got style options in here. You've got a lot of different things you can deal with. I'm looking for one of the things I think we're good here. That offset. Let's try this. Let's see. Okay, we're good there. All right, let's go to the bands. Okay, so this is defining if you have bands on or not. You can turn them on, but we have a band down here. So one of the things, this band is important to look at. Right now, it's using a band style, which we're going to edit. But one of the things it's showing you is there's no gap. So that band is chucked right there. So what we're going to do is we're going to give this guy a little gap, 1/2 inch. So what that's going to do is drop that band down below, all right? And we're going to come back to this because there's two areas that are really important here. What's called your profile 1 and your profile 2. Well, let's go ahead. We'll just change that right now. Profile 1 and profile 2 has to do with what it's labeling down here below. So to the left, it's using a surface elevation, and to the right, it's also using a surface elevation. We're going to change this up so that the profile 1 is going to be your surface, and your profile 2 is going to be your proposed. So what we need to do here is click on that and grab layout 1. Okay, so we've swapped it. So when we get out of here, what's going to happen is it's going to change that left and right. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and apply this change and okay that. And so what we did was we made a little change. Notice your band should have dropped down. Okay, so everybody see that? And do you notice on the left now, you're getting two elevations here. Before they were the same elevation, but it says 759, 74 on mine, and 757 for 400. That's the difference between existing elevation and proposed at that point. Okay, before it was just reading, they were both saying the same number. Okay, is that okay with everybody? All right, we good?
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to change some of the look of this guy to make it a little bit more pleasing. So I'm going to click on this guy. I'm going to right click, and we're going to go to edit your profile view style. So this box has some great information, and it has like graph, grid, your title information, your vertical access, and then what you can display or not display. So those two boxes, this one, the profile view style, and then the other one we looked at, these two are the really important areas when you get into your profiles. And it takes, trust me, it takes really getting into them. I have to go back and forth all the time with these things. So let's start out with our graph first. Well, information, let's look there. Information doesn't tell us a whole lot, okay, but let's look at the graph. So the graph right now is set to be 100-foot horizontal, which is what I want, but instead of, right now it's set to 1 inch is equal to 10 feet. Let's see, let's change that a minute. Let's see what happens. I want to change that to a 1 inch is equal to 5 feet. Let's see what that does. So notice, just so you see it, that makes a huge difference in the look of your graph. So if we go, let's say, to a 20 scale like that and apply it, it really changes these things up depending on what you're looking at. But I think we're actually, in my picture, I think it should be, we can leave it to 10. But normally you do an exaggeration. Okay, that's pretty common. So we normally do have an exaggeration going on there. You can also give it a custom scale exaggeration, but it'll automatically, depending on what your current horizontal setting is and what your vertical, it'll calculate an exaggeration for you. Also notice too, your profile is generated from left to right, but you can also flip it. So if I toggle that on and flip it, it just reverses it for me. Although my band's information, that kind of whacks it out sometimes. So I don't want to do that. But there's some weird things that'll go on with your bands, by the way. So now let's look at the grid. So the grid itself, if you have grids, you can do some things like clipping. So notice if I clip the grid and I clip the height when I apply that, notice how it clips that up. Some people like that style. Some people don't like that. I don't normally clip, but you can clip it horizontally, you can clip it vertically. If I clip it this way, like that. So there's a lot of different styles you can do. One of the things you might want to do is notice at the end here, there's a lot of space there. If you don't want that to have much space, top, bottom, left, right, you can clip some of that off. So for the right here, maybe I only want that like say a 1/2 inch. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and notice it brought that back. So if you're trying to fit that in a viewport, sometimes that's really important. You guys getting that to work okay? Everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's title, annotation, information. That's this guy here. That's your title annotation. You can change its font, you can change its height, you can change what it's saying in there if you don't like it. You can even turn it off. There's top annotation, there's left annotation, there's right, there's bottom. So right now we have top, that's your top point. Your left is this guy, that's your elevation. And there is no right, the right is turned off and the bottom is turned off. So you got different settings that you can get into there. For horizontal axis, that would be the lines going this way. Again, you can change the interval there. So right now we're set up to an interval of 100. So your majors are coming in at 100. That's your stationing. But it's also got little ticks every quarter. So I'm going to change my interval here to 50 and then apply that. And notice that dropped down now. It's hard to see, but when we get out here, you'll see that those went down to 50s instead of 25s. It doesn't change anything in terms of your data. It can give you elevations anywhere, but it's just going to only list those. Vertical is the same way. Vertical, the interval is every 10. Instead of 10, maybe that's really busy. I'm going to make that every 20 and then apply that. And notice what that did. That clipped that down quite a bit. And instead of an interval of 2 feet for your minors, I'm going to make it every 10 and then apply that. So you notice that makes your grid look a lot less busy. So it just depends on kind of what your look is, what you're looking for. Everybody's a little different. Okay, so the display allows you to toggle certain things on and off. Okay, so for instance, if we don't want the graph title, that's this guy. I just turn that guy off and apply it. He goes. Let's see. Then we get into the axes left and right. So we have the left axis. Pull it over here. We've got left axis and left axis title. I'm going to go ahead and leave all that on. What I do want to do is come down to the right axis. Right axis, I don't necessarily want those on. So what I'm going to do is, let's see, I don't have a title. I'm going to turn off my majors. That gets rid of that. And if you don't want your ticks, you can turn those ticks off too. So if you just want, let's say, your major ticks, but not your minor ticks, you can just right click and turn those off. So again, this is pretty flexible, just depends on how you want to look at it. Now, one thing I want to do here is at the bottom, we have two station sets here. The band has a station and that has stations. So I'm going to toggle those. Let's go to the bottom axis. And let's just toggle off the major annotations, the bottom axis. Okay. So let's go ahead and hit OK and see what we've done here to our grid and look at it. It's a little bit, to me, it's a little bit friendlier. And you can see we set it down to tick interval every 50 feet. The band's still showing us every 100 feet. We can change that up too. All right, anybody getting that to work? There's a lot in there. Any questions so far?
No.
Okay, just a lot to it, right? It's a lot of pick and click. Oh, let's do this too. I don't like this up here. I don't normally like stations top and bottom. So we're going to go back in there. Oh, one other thing too. If you don't want to see these blue lines, this is your horizontal geometry lines. Beginning PCs, PTs. A lot of people don't show that either. I think that's kind of stuff I don't want to show either. So we'll see if we can get rid of that too. So we're going to go back in that same area, the edit profile view style. And we're going to go to the display tab. So at the top, I'm going to go to the top. I don't want any of my top information on. So let's see. I'm going to turn my top. Where's my top? There it is. Top axis is off. Let's see. Here it is. Top. I don't need my top axis. I don't need my top axis title. So I'm going to go ahead and apply that, get rid of that. There's still ticks up there. You might want to leave the ticks. That's up to you. I'm probably just going to take them both off. I just think you don't need all that information. A lot of people don't do it that way. So again, it just depends on where you work. Let's see if we can find these geometry guys. They're also in there. I think they're horizontal geometry marks. Let's see. Profile hatch. There it is. Grid at horizontal geometry. So if you don't like those guys, you can just toggle those out. So you clean your grid up a whole lot more. That's kind of the bottom line. You don't want a lot of busy work on there. Particularly on a profile, you can get pipes down here, so you don't want a whole lot of that other stuff cluttering it up because every line just makes it look that much harder to see. Is everybody's okay so far?
Yeah.
It's not too bad, is it? Not too
Yeah,
terribly.
like you said, just a bunch of clicking.
Yeah, yes. Well, and you get used to it. And of course, you could set things up differently once you get into it. All right. So we're going to do some of the label styles here now. We want to come down to the band. Now, if you click here, the band and everything selects, but we want to just edit the band right now. So we're just going to come here and just make sure you click on the text of the band. Okay. And then we're going to right click and we're going to edit the band style. All right. So this box is also a little confusing, but it's primarily, you're going to primarily work with major and minor stations. So go to the band details here. And what we want to do is go to the major stations. Now this right here is your height. So if you want to make this bigger this way, you can increase that or decrease it, that kind of stuff. I want you to go to the full band and we're going to compose the label here. Okay. So under this, there's station value, existing ground, and finished ground. So remember, we had to set which profile it was reading for a finished ground or existing ground. So we already did that. But if you hadn't done that, you'd have to do that or you might want to do that before you go to this section. But what we're going to do is go to the existing ground. And again, these are kind of typical, you know, heights and those kind of things that you've seen before. But one of the things we like to do in profiles is you don't normally show 2 decimal places for existing ground and 3 for proposed. Usually it's 1 decimal place for existing because that's plus or minus anyway, and 2 for proposed. So what we're going to do is go to the existing ground EG elevation, click on this guy, click on that one right there, and it should say your profile elevation. You're going to click this dude right there, take him to 1/10 of a foot, promote him, okay that, and okay that. And I shouldn't have got out of there. We'll go back in there. And then we're going to do this same thing for the finish ground, except we're going to set him to 2 decimal places. So instead of 3, 2, promote it, okay it, apply it, and you're out. So everybody see that showing up? So that's a lot better. That's a little bit more pleasing look. It gives you better detail. So, and again, some people might put their proposed on the left, some on the right. You can swap that any way you want. It just, again, a lot of it depends on what agency you're working with or who you're working for, how that all comes out. Is that working for everybody? No questions? You guys are pretty easy. You good? All right, so now what do we notice about these stations, these elevations? They're only every what? 100 feet, right? So a vertical curve, usually you're going to lay this thing out at every 25 feet. So you need a little bit more information. Now at our scale, we can't see it, but we can add 50 foots in here. So I'm going to show you how to do that real quick. So we're going to go to the band, right click, edit your band style. We're going to go to the minor stations, label composer. We're going to go to the existing ground. We're going to set that up for, again, 1/100th, tenth of a foot, promote it. We're going to go to the finish ground. Set that up. Click on that guy for your profile 2 elevation. Make him 100th of a foot, promoting. And okay that. And I think we have to go to the display and turn the minors on. So we've got minor ticks. We need minor ticks on. And let's see if that works now. Okay, there's my ticks. So I got to get my elevation information on. So let's click that back to that, edit vertical profile. Oops, I got the wrong box. Make sure you click on the band information. Okay, so we need the labels at minor stations also turned on. So there you have it to every 50 feet. Now it gets a little busy, but like on a highway, they actually have those in at every 25 feet. But you would be at a different scale that you'd be able to see that. Is everybody getting that to work?
Yeah.
All right. So we're almost done with this profile. We've got one more thing we want to do. We want to fix these guys so they look a little better, okay? So first off, this guy is a crest curve, and this guy is a crest curve, and this one is a sag curve, but it's not giving me any information, high point or low point. So what I can do is change the the type of curve that it's using, or the type of labeling style. So we're going to change the labeling style here in a minute. So we're going to click on this guy's label style. And I want you to right click. We're going to go to edit the labels. So this guy is what's called a sag curve. So we're going to grab this guy, open this up, and I want to do sag only. We're going to edit that style. And I think it's actually pretty good. Let's go to the layout on it. We need to change just a couple things in here. So I want you to grab what's called the PVI station and elevation. Click on this. So there's a lot of stuff in here. So the only one we want to do with this guy, we're going to put a foot mark at the end for the length because it doesn't have that. So just click at the bottom, put a foot mark. You don't have to promote anything. Just click on that. The other thing I want to show you is back here under border, there's a background mask that's set to false. If we turn this on, I'll show you what this will do. You apply that, okay that, we can go ahead and okay this and okay this. There's a lot of okays. And this guy then, I don't know why it lost my numbers, but it didn't do what I wanted it to do. Did yours guys look like this?
Looks just like yours.
It shouldn't do. This is one of those things that really just bugs me. It shouldn't be locked down like that. Let's see if we can fix that. What I wanted to show you, what that mask does. You know what the mask, notice what the mask does? Notice how the mask covers the grid so that the grid doesn't run through the text. Let's see, but you can see we fixed the 200, right? Let's see if we can fix these. These have to do with anchors. So let's see if we can fix these. This is where you really get, it didn't do this to me yesterday. So it's always one of those things. Let's go back in and edit this thing. Actually, I'll tell you an easier way to get to this one. If you just click on him and right click and go to properties, sometimes it tells you right, well, that's not working either. There it goes. There you go, properties, where it says sag only. I'm going to edit that. Sometimes it's easier to find it that way. Come on, edit. Mine just doesn't want to do it today. There you go, edit it. If you're not seeing all of this right now, we'll get this. This has to do probably with the anchor points. Let's see if we can figure this out. Go to your, let's go to the, there's a BVC. That looks right, end point. Try setting end to start. No, that doesn't, that makes it worse, doesn't it? Maybe it's this one. Yeah, well, there's an issue in there. I'm not sure why it's doing that. None of those are doing what I want it to. Oh, well, that's not worth it. We'll figure it out. I'll figure it out for you. I think you guys get the idea, right? I have to sit down here and play with it. But anyway, these guys can be the tricky parts, right? They definitely take a little bit of time. There's a thing down here called an anchor point that this is anchored to, and that's why it's not working. Sometimes if you drag them, yeah, it's not working. So anyway, anybody getting any success, more success than me? I'm sure we'll get out of here and I'll figure it out right away. All right, so the big trick again with these guys is labeling, and labeling, as you just saw, can be a pain in the neck, but it usually works pretty well. And this one, the weird thing is here, this is what they normally should look like. But you notice how this is getting a high point for me down in here. This stuff overrides. These guys are really need to be fixed, I think, in Civil 3D. But I'll show you guys how to do this on Wednesday. All right, any questions so far? You can see they're pretty tricky, some of the labeling. One other trick on the labeling is if you don't like this guy sitting here, you can just typically just click on him. Nothing else highlights, just the beginning and end, and just hit delete, because we don't normally need to see those, or they can be pulled out. I don't know why I've got that one. I got some funky thing going on. Notice that's in my alignment. I got that messed up. So you can get some weird stuff. They're not profiles, like I said, they're a little tricky. But the cool thing is they are basically linked to everything else. Any questions? So let's look at a couple of tools that are associated with profiles that I like that are pretty neat. You can create points back here that you can use for geometry points. And now this might alter my profile if I add them, or my surface. But so what I can do here is go to points, and we can create points on alignments. And then they have what's called profile geometry points. So what this will do is give me, basically it gives me BVC and EVC information as a point object. So I'm going to go here to points creation, and we're going to have the manual, the elevation come in automatic. So in other words, we want to get that information from the feature that it's going to give it from. And we're going to have the description come in from the object. So we're going to do automatic object. Okay. So once we do that, you just select the alignment that you want to get those points on. And I need the actual surface alignment. So it needs to know, do you want the surface itself or do you want the layout? I want the layout information. Go ahead and hit that. Now you won't see any points because they're hidden by the blank. But if we go over to the point group and look at the point group, it should be there. They came in. Not having a lot of success today. Yeah, they're there. No, they're not there. Anybody get any points to show up? Let me try that again.
No.
Yeah, okay. Let's try this one more time. Of course, none of it works today, right? It's not something you're going to do that much, but let's see. Make sure that's elevation's automatic. Point objects are automatic. Okay. So I'm going to select the alignment that I want and come here and select the surface. Oh, okay. Notice at the bottom it's asking me for stations. I want that, so I have to hit enter for the 0 and enter for the end. It did bring in points now. You should see points now. Right there. Those are BVC and EVC points. And if you go over to your point groups, look at your all points, you'll see they're now in there. There's your BVC station. So it gives you station elevation, and it also harvested. That is the proposed elevation information. Now I got to be careful. I don't want to add these right now because they would alter the surface, because those are tied into the surface. So don't add them. Okay, just so you don't want to change it. So that's one way. That's a kind of neat little tool. The other kind of really cool tool is this inquiry tool. So if you want to know, like, say, what is the elevation, like, say, right there, or at a certain station, I don't see that. So we can go over to Analyze, go to this guy called the Inquiry tool, tell it what you want. We're going to do what's called a profile. So you have profile station elevation, or you have profile difference in elevation. So both of those are pretty cool. So let's say if we went to profile station and elevation, you just tell it which profile you're talking about. So if we want the design profile, that would be my layout one. Then I can just type in the station I want. Let's say 5 plus 25. And there's the elevation at 525. So that's a nice little tool to give you a reference. If I want to know what the difference is between the two surfaces, so between the layout surface and the existing ground surface, if you type in an elevation or a station, let's say, so at station, let's say 525, there's a difference of 1.67 feet there. So that's a nice little tool that you can use to help you like check things or look for something. So that's under your inquiry section. Okay. So the last thing you can do is if you have this information and you want to share that with somebody, you can do that by exporting that as a land XML file. So I can click on this guy, select export land XML, and it'll allow me to take all that information out. And anything associated with it, I could take it. I could even give it the, if I check that, I could take both the layout and the surface file. So that's a good way of transferring data to somebody else. Okay. Any questions? I know we covered a lot, but we'll be doing this. I'll get that little, I'll get that label stuff set up for you because, yeah, that should have worked a lot better. It usually does. Usually I don't have any problems with it, but it's these labels. I've found that the trickiest labels to edit are these guys right here. They work pretty well, but in general, they can be a little bit tricky. So, any questions anybody has?
No?
Okay, so we will be finishing up our assignment from last week, doing our alignments, and then we're going to be doing another little profile project, pretty similar to what I just did. But keep in mind, if you're a designer, there are reasons you're going to hold these grades at something. We're not doing a design. It's just about getting the picture out for us right now. So essentially, this would be like, hey, an engineer just gives you this and says, I need this profile based on these parameters. He's already designed all that stuff, and you're essentially drawing the picture for him. So that's all really good stuff the way that works. Okay, well, if there's no questions, then I guess we'll be done for the day. I will go ahead and stop the recording and get that formatted and get that out there for you. And then I guess I will see everybody on Wednesday. Okay. And if you do have questions,